Christmas Story interview with Yano Anaya. Ha! We have the star of the show with us here today. I hunted him down. Actually, my friend hunted him down. And I am so delighted, Yano, that you're on the show to share with us visionary stuff, inspiration, joy, and some of your story, because it's really an amazing, fascinating life that you have had up to this point and that you're creating moving forward. So thank you for coming on Someone Gets Me and being part of this amazing community of visionary, gifted people around the world.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
This is so
Very
fun.
much.
So if you're listening to this show and you've not seen A Christmas Story, you probably want to see A Christmas Story because 4 of the cast members are on this show in a row. So you will learn about them and A Christmas Story. But more than that, you will learn about who they are as people, as creators, as visionaries, as gifted people. Because there's more to them than the one character you see in one movie. Much more to them. But there is a common thread that they all came together in this great film. So first, I would like to ask you, how did you get involved in A Christmas Story? You're a child. Like, were you already in entertainment? Was it your first time? Like, how did all that happen for you? Like, what was the story?
Great question. So, you know how the unfolding of life happens. My sister, Katie Kurtzman, who started her acting career in Miami, I would say back in the late 60s. So when my family decided to move from Miami to California in 76, I was about 4 years old. Mm-hmm. And since my sister was already in the industry and she was pushing my mom to come on, Mom, we're in Hollywood. We live 15 minutes from where everything is happening. I want to be a star. That's what my sister wanted to do. And she was 9 years old. And so she got an agent and she got a manager. And within her second audition, she got a job. And so my mom was like, wow, that was a lot easier than Miami. Okay, well, great. So because I'm a little toddler, she has to take me with her everywhere, right? And so she's like, why am I not just taking them both and pushing them both into drama classes and take classes? And so that's what I did at about 4.5 years old. I started acting classes and it was so much fun. I loved it. And got me the same manager, Tammy Lynn, as a matter of fact. And so that's how my journey on the acting career happened, was that I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And so it was my mom's decision. And so I just started getting a lot of commercials as a child. I had a lot of commercials. And until I got my first audition for a feature film, which was super exciting. I remember I was 10 years old and, I'm in 5th grade. And it was just the highlight. And I was, of course, being in the industry, doing a lot of commercials, being very used to what your job is. And then also being very used to going to school on set, because that's part of the process. I was actually really nervous. And when I went to this audition, it was literally a cattle call. I mean, I was so nervous that there was 300 other kids there. And it was in a gymnasium. It was like watching a basketball game happen. And so, I did my thing, and I was like, oh, there's no way. There's just no way. There's 300 other kids, and got a call back. It's like, what? And back in those days, I gotta be honest with you, there were no cell phones, right? So it was I couldn't wait. It was every day I was running home and check the answering machine. No callback. 3rd day, got a call back. Oh my God, I was so excited. So I went on the callback, and there was a little bit less than half of the kids there. I'm like, oh my God, all these kids in the callback. Usually when you go to a callback, there's 3 or 4 other kids there. No, there was 70. And so I'm like, oh man, okay, well, let's do my thing. And, it's back then, it was my acting classes were just about being more of who I already was. It wasn't about a structured learning tactics and skill sets. It was just really about allowing myself to be who I am without any kind of fear, I should say. Mm-hmm. And so I went on the second callback, and when I got to the room, there was Bob Clark, Gene Shepard, and a couple other producers. And I read my lines, and Bob Clark loved me. He's like, "You're hired. You're Grover Dill for Christmas Story." And I'm like, "Awesome!" And then Bob was like, "One condition: you have to cut all your hair off." And because I was 10 and I had never cut my hair, so my hair was like huge, beautiful blonde curls. And I was like, "No, Mom, I'm not cutting my hair off. I'm not doing it." Literally, I said no to the job. And my mom, and this is like within, Bob had a conversation with my mom. He says, if he's not willing to cut his hair off, then I have to hire somebody else. And so my mom had a hard time with me. She was literally like, "Listen here, son, your hair grows back. Like, it's going to come back. You're not ever going to not have hair anymore." And so, of course, I agreed to it. An hour and a half later, kicking and screaming. And so that's when I got hired. That's my little story about getting hired in Christmas Story.
Wow. Gosh,
Yeah.
that's wild.
Yeah. It was awesome. And that was my journey as a 10-year-old.
So was it everything you thought it was going to be when you were so excited to get on a feature film, and as the work started and you guys all had to do everything, was it what you thought it was going to be, or how was that part of it?
It was actually more than what I thought it was going to be.
Mm.
And I got to tell you, the reason for that is because this is going to be the first time I'm getting on a plane to travel somewhere to do a job, right? So I had to go to Cleveland from California, right? And then because we were in Cleveland for a couple of weeks and it didn't snow, we had to move the whole cast to Canada because that's where the snow was. It was freezing in Canada. And so my experience of what it meant or how well they take care of the actors was amazing to me. Remember, back in those days, it was just way before the Patriot Act, right? Way before TSA. And, when we got on this big Delta plane, we were in first class. And first class was a very different experience back then. It literally, you had your own chef. So the chef would bring through this big metal carton, open it up, and there'd be all this fresh food and vegetables, and he would just slice it in front of you and put it on your plate. And they're bringing people champagne, and of course I had apple juice. And the pilot would come out, and he would meet all the kids and give them all their wings. And it was just such a very different experience of flying than it is today. You know what I mean? Back then it was like it was a different experience. I gotta say, it was very elevated than what it is today. Today it's like cold, and people are doing their thing and they're shuffling, and you never see the pilot, and except for you hear his or her voice. And so once we got to Cleveland, they pick you up in a limo and they took you to the hotel and anything and everything that you wanted. And then when you got to, the set, it was like Bob was just like, he was so good at being not only a great human, but he was just so good at communicating with any kind of level of personality. Like he knew how to change his state of mind and mindset and consciousness to be able to deal with different levels of people, whether it be Gene, who was a really good friend, or turn around and also talk to Peter or Scott or myself. And, it was amazing. Even at 10 years old, which it didn't really comprehend to me back then, but it was amazing to watch his ability to really understand how to shift himself to be able to communicate well with people.
Wow. That's a real big gift. That's
Yes.
a real talent. And
Yes.
to be able to shift and move, like seamlessly, right?
Yes.
On the spot with all the different people present, that,
Yes.
that's really amazing. And it's great that you were able to see it and you were 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really cool. So fast forward a little bit of your life, because now you do something, different, right? Tell us a little bit about Yano's life, Christmas Story, and
oh boy.
and particularly what I would like you to kind of mention are ways you've handled different obstacles or challenges that have come into your path that maybe you weren't expecting. And what have you done to overcome those things that could have slowed you down or could have stopped you, and you were able to persevere and keep moving?
There's a lot of them. So I would say we can start back when I was about 18, 19 years old. After my last gig of the Blue Iguana, which was actually, most people don't know this, but the Blue Iguana was a movie that was directed by John Lafia, and there was Flea, Pamela Gidley. There was some other really big actors, but now I can Dean Stockwell, Jessica Harper. There was a lot of big Dylan McDermott, and so there was a really nice cast doing this movie, which was filmed in Mexico. And lo and behold, when I went to my callback, guess who showed up as the other person that I was actually going against for this role? Scott Schwartz.
Oh no.
My buddy from a Christmas Story, right? Because we all got along very well, right? And I was like, Scotty, what are you doing here? I was like, oh my God, like you're going for this role too? Awesome. May the best man win, right? So it was like, we always have these relationships when we're growing up as kids, we're going on auditions all the time. We see each other all the time, like Corey Feldman, Corey Haim, Seth Green. All of us were kids when we were growing up doing all these commercials with each other. And so when he showed up to that callback, I was like, oh yes. It was more of like a fun thing.
Right.
Than it was like, oh my God, like Scott Schwartz is I have to go against, and it was never like that kind of vibe. It was very positive between all of us, because work was work, you know what I mean? And whoever, we understood that if you got cast for a specific role, it was just because we fit into the role, right? So remember that writers, directors, producers, their jobs is to make sure that what your character is fits into the rest of the character, and you have to look and feel and all that stuff. So there's a lot that goes behind it, and I had got the role. And so that was my last gig. Now, after that, 15, 16, 17, 18, graduated high school, working 2-3 jobs, started college, trying to exercise every day because exercise was like part of my life, my whole life. And I just got run down because my auditions, like I was getting 1, 2, 3 auditions a week, and I was never landing a job. Like in 4 years, I never landed a job. And then in 1994 is when the earthquake hit in Chatsworth, California. Mm-hmm. And this was a very scary part of my life because it destroyed the house that I lived in. And I was in LA by myself. My mom had already moved back to Florida, and my sisters moved back to Florida. So I was the only one back in LA. And I had to it was scary. I had to make a decision on what I was going to do. And I didn't want to be in LA anymore because it just felt like the earthquake made it kind of seal the deal where nothing was really moving forward for me there anymore. So I packed up my stuff and moved to Vegas. And that was only because my best friend from 3rd grade, that we've known each other our entire lives, he moved to Vegas to live closer to his dad when we were in high school. And so he said, man, just come on, I got a room for you. So I went to Vegas. So that was my first challenge, was dealing with the earthquake. I don't know if anybody has ever been through an earthquake before, but earthquakes are a challenge to where now it's been a long time, you know what I mean, since 94, but whenever I feel the earth, or I can almost feel the change in the magnetism of the earth before an earthquake happens. You know how most animals will recognize a change, and they're on the stance ready to move. I can almost feel it when it actually comes down, as if I'm sleeping. When I'm sleeping, I'm gone. And so this fear of the earth becoming movable or liquid underneath my feet is something that is always prevalent in my mind. So that was the first challenge that I got over, because I think that not address the possibility of having PTSD from that, right? Because it's a possibility of any kind of traumatic experience you have in your life. Most of us don't recognize that we actually need to deal with it. Like, we have to deal with it, because if we don't really address those emotions and walk ourselves through them, or have help doing that, then it's something that is in ourselves, like it's in our body. And until we address it, then we can never shift that energy. And so that was my first challenge. And then my second challenge was, after being in Vegas for a while, I actually got invited to do the very first Christmas Story convention, which was in 2006. And Scott Schwartz had reached out to me and said, hey, man, we've been going to these conventions and doing autograph signings for the last couple of years, and we couldn't find you. We didn't know where you were. But now I found you. Do you want to come with us? I was like, absolutely. Like, how fun is that to be able to go to some place where there's a bunch of crazy fun people and they want to come there and actually pay you for an autograph? I was like, that's a different experience. Okay, cool. Let's do that. So that first experience was in October of 2006 at the Chiller Show in New Jersey. And that weekend I met literally thousands of people that proved to me, that showed me, that made me have a different understanding about how this movie has webbed itself into people's lives and their homes during Christmas time. I mean, I knew TBS, put it on, on the TV for 24 hours for like the first 12 days before Christmas. And, but, for me, it was like Christmas Story was nothing until that time, until like 1996 from 83. It was like not a big deal because it bombed. And so when I really had a firsthand experience of the love that people have for this movie and the relatability, so the ability of not only them but their families, how they can relate to all the characters and the way that this whole movie plays out, it intrigued me a lot. Like, I was blown away at how much people really loved this movie and loved it so much that I would have people walk up to me and say, oh my God, I hated you in that movie. And I was like, I did my job. You know what I mean? That was my job. It's for you to hate me. I'm the little toady. You know what I mean? And so that was a great experience that people still recognize me as that person that was like, oh my God, there's the little toadies. He just popped out of the trash can. Oh my God. And so that was so exciting for me that, that it resonated with people, and it's a part of their life for like years. And so, I didn't really think about it, but that was the first weekend. And meaning think about it in the long term, right? Because this was like a new revelation for me. Now, one of the biggest things that happened to me that very first weekend was that I met my wife that weekend.
Nice.
And she was a fan, right? And her best friend actually introduced us. And when I met her, I was like, wow. Like, this woman is just drop dead gorgeous, amazing. And she's shorter than I am because I'm a little guy. And so I initiated the process of me stalking her in a very positive way.
Right.
So I intrigued her. I got her attention, and we communicated. And 2 years later, we ended up married in Puerto Rico. And so that was a great experience, living on an island in tranquility in the rainforest. And we did that for about 18 months, and then we moved back to Atlanta. That's where we are now, back to Atlanta. And because of, I could back it up because I started my career as a personal trainer back in Vegas as well. Mm-hmm. And that just kind of escalated over a period of time. And then when we moved to Puerto Rico, I couldn't really do that there. And plus we were just like kind of burning through our savings, just really enjoying life. And so when we moved back to the United States, we landed in Atlanta, and we both got jobs at the Atlanta School of Massage, which was like the first massage school in Atlanta, because my wife, she's a naturopath doctor. And so she's got a very deep background when it comes to the human sciences. And so she was a professor of health sciences. And the owner of the school approached me about creating a personal training school. And so that was like, wow, okay, that's a different path than what I thought I was going to go down. So I got hired as the director of education for the Atlanta Personal Trainer Program. And that's when my career as I would say more of a mentor, role model,
Mhm.
school teacher, and then of course the director side of managing, employees, or I should say my instructors, kind of, it just kind of took off. And so it was just a wonderful experience to be able to meet people who have a love for exercise and eating healthy. And it's like I didn't have to change people's minds or help them change their own lifestyles or support them through the process. They were actually coming to me because they wanted it. And so it was a different experience of that side of the industry. And so when you start doing something that demands you to be better of who you already are, you start learning a lot about what you don't know. And so,
That's the truth.
right. And so I learned just so much, not only about myself, but about my body and about other people and about the general public. And, it was such a great learning experience. And I did that for almost 7 years. And then that's when I made a decision to open up my own body sculpting studio. So that was my next journey, which was a huge challenge. I don't know if anybody out there is an entrepreneur or has owned their own business. But when you go from employee status to entrepreneur, nobody ever teaches you that you literally need to have a very specific skill set when it comes to understanding how to balance your life and balance your energy and balance where you want to shift and how to designate your energy. Because if you're not already married, that's great because you can focus all on, your business. But if you are married and you are looking at a family, then you have to be able to diversify and delineate and designate and really shift yourself and not allow your professional life to pour into your personal life. And that happened. And so I got caught up in the business aspect of being an entrepreneur, which I absolutely loved for the first 2 years until my personal relationship kind of, started deteriorating and with my wife. And so when it came down to about the 3-year mark, COVID hit, which that was also a very different experience that we were all going through, worldwide. And so I had to really make a decision on what I wanted to do. Like, well, I don't, it's like I'm being forced to close my business, which being forced to close my business forced me to have to close the business. Like I literally had to go through bankruptcy and let that go. And through that whole process, I also had to find a balance where I also had to be able to separate myself from my wife and do it in a fashion where we can at least still be friends and cordial and just having an understanding that we were not, or at least I wasn't showing up to that side of my life that was needed to be there. And so that was a huge transition for me, very painful, but that's, a lot of people go through divorces and people lose businesses. And so that was something that I got to experience. And so when it came down, and this was a year prior is when Christmas Story Family actually happened. Now, how that spawned before I actually closed my gym was that I always hired business coaches. Like if in business or as anybody who wants to become healthy, the best thing to do is hire a professional. If when something breaks underneath your ground and it's a plumbing, you don't want to try to dig it in yourself. You hire a professional, right? or your tooth gets loose. You got a cavity. You don't want to try to do it yourself. You need to go to a dentist and have somebody who's a professional help you. So when it comes to business, I would always surround myself by people that were smarter than I am. Because I was always taught if you are the smartest person in the room, you've hit your lid. If you surround yourself with people that are more experienced, more seasoned, and have more education than you, and are actually maybe have more success than you, then you have room to grow as a human. And so one of my business coaches found out that I was Grover Dill.
Like he didn't know in the beginning?
Had no idea. No idea until like 5.5 months in of a relationship, until he decided to Google me one day. And he freaked out. He caught me on the phone. He's like, I am so angry with you. I'm like, oh my God, what did I do wrong now? What now? He's like, you didn't tell me you were Grover Dill. I was like, I don't just tell anybody and everybody that I'm Grover Dill. You know, it's not something that I do. If you find out, that's great. If somebody else tells you while I'm standing in front of you, that's awesome. But it's not something that I do, is tell people, by the way, you love A Christmas Story? It's kind of silent like what I do now, though. It's kind of weird. So anyways, he found out that I was Grover Dill, and he's a huge super fan, wanted my autograph, so on and so forth. And turned out that we had some deep conversations about the movie, because it's been a part of his life his whole life. And it's done some amazing things for him during his life, which it has for me as well. Like the Christmas Story, that decision to say, okay, Mom, I'll cut my hair, was like, it has created doors of opportunity that I would have never seen 10, 15, 20, 30 years later. For example, meeting my wife, right? Being reunited with the cast again, building that relationship back with them. Meeting, my current business partner, where it affected his life so much in a positive way, where he was like, dude, like, do you know how many fans you have? Like, do you know, like, in the Christmas Story world, like, you guys go on, events 2 or 3 times a year, and there's still hundreds, if not millions, of people out there that don't have that kind of opportunity to actually drive to an event, because you're very limited of where we actually go, because there's a whole operations beside of that of making that happen. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, I know. He was like, dude, do you have any idea the opportunity that you have to create something that could last forever, and you could pass it on to your son if you wanted to? Like, do you guys know, like, what kind of legends you really are? Like, A Christmas Story cast, like, oh my God, Scott Farkas, Flick, Peter, Grover Dill, like, you have no idea how famous you are. I was like, you're right. Okay.
I don't know.
I'm just a humble dude. You know what I mean? I'm just a personal trainer, man. So he's the one that actually had the inspiration to inspire me to create something that nobody else has when it comes to the cast, right? And nobody else has been able, or actually had the opportunity, because of my relationship with everybody else. I can get on the phone with Zach, and I can get on the phone with Scotty, and I can get on the phone with Ian, and I can get on the phone with Teddy, and I can say, hey, are you open to doing this? And he's either got a 50-50 chance. And most of the time when it comes from me, because I would say I'm kind of like the glue that holds everybody together, they will do anything. And so when I approached him about, being a part of a community that gives the fans access to the cast, and where we can create fun things to do, and create contests, and actually build a gift shop where we can sell our own autographs, instead of people having to go to eBay or trying to get a hold of somebody through Facebook on the messenger, and they never respond. You know what I mean? There was like, I kind of just cut out any kind of, actually I paved the highway for fans to be able to be involved in a community where they can share their love for the movie. They can share all their collectibles. They can actually have fun with the cast, and they can get involved in some fun things to do throughout the year. And so, of course, this is like the beginning. This is only just barely in a year and a half. This is the second Christmas that we started. And we have basically right now there's a 10-year plan, but really that 10-year plan is multiplied by 3. So there is a 30-year plan that we actually have in place that is really going to expand what we do to be able to make this a community of Christmas Story fans, where they feel like, literally, like they feel like they are a part of the movie now, instead of it being on the box in their living room and they're just watching the movie and laughing at it and resonating with it and relating to it. and sharing it with their kids. Now they have the opportunity to say, they're actually my family now. Like literally, if I wanted to, I can go to Facebook and I can tag them, and I can do things with them now. I mean, that kind of relationship to have with the fans, millions of them, there's nothing like that exists today. It's a whole different concept. And so if we can make it work and grow it, then we're going to do our best to make that happen. Yep.
Ooh, that's fun. So I have a question that goes along with everything you said, but it's a little divergent.
Okay.
It seems to me that you have keen intuition. Is that accurate?
Okay. I would agree with that. At least to my recollection of my knowledge would be, sure, my experience.
Okay. That's how it feels listening to you, that you use your intuition along with your education and motivation and all of that to vision something. Like you said, you're paving a highway that hasn't been created until you started putting it together with all the different pieces and then your own intuition.
Yes.
Yes. And I think that is directly connected, because I'm highly intuitive, so it's easy for me to see it in somebody. But when you were talking about the earthquake and about the PTSD and the land melting, how you could feel the magnetic change before it happens, that's an intuitive gifted quality. That's not only about 1 or 2% of the people in the whole world have that kind of ability to tune in on that level. And so I find it very beautiful that you've gone through your whole life until recently, just kind of cruising along, not having the ego running the show of, oh my God, he's Grover Dill. He's this, I'm that, you know? I think it's cool your business coach didn't know till he Googled you. Like when I go to work, because I work mostly with creative people, gifted creative people. So most of them are either musicians, artists, athletes, that kind of thing. And I know who they are. Like I do a little bit of homework, you know, maybe not a lot, but at least a little bit to know before I decide if I'm going to take them on as a client. So I think it's kind of funny that he waited to Google you and then went, oh. And I think it's a huge compliment to you that he didn't know until he found out on his own. And so I'm like, oh, those are qualities of somebody with an intuition or some overexcitabilities of giftedness that show up in very beautiful ways that often get overlooked. And so I wanted to kind of bring that out, because in real life, those of us who have these kinds of gifts, or the creativity you have, all of it, the passion for health and body and the way it works, and all of it is a skill set that kind of sets you up to be able to say, well, what neat thing can I build from all of these pieces? And so how do you maintain your discipline to see the vision and then stay on point to the best of your ability? What do you do to keep your discipline going?
It's a great question. So on a daily basis, I study neurolinguistics, and I have a current business coach by the name of Andy Murphy, who specializes in understanding how to bring yourself to different levels of brainwaves so that you can pull yourself in and out of different states. So my daily routine is the first thing that I wake up in the morning. I replenish my body with water, and I put on some guided meditation. Very first thing is I fill my brain with thankfulness, gratefulness. I focus on being in tune with Mother Nature, being grateful that what we have the opportunity to create has been gifted to us. But what doesn't, for me, it doesn't matter if anybody's, religious or what their beliefs are or what they've studied their entire life. There is a source. And if that's what you want to call the source, then that's great. If you want to call it God, that's great. But in reality, it's very real. And when we have the ability to tap into that, whether it be somebody praying or whether just understanding different levels of megahertz in your body, then it becomes, I would say it's rejuvenating to be able to not think about anything else but focus on me as a human being in my creative space and being grateful for what I'm presented, which is another day of life. And then as I go through that meditation, which, I take about 30 minutes every morning, and then I am grateful for the body that I'm in. So I treat it well, I stretch it, and then I go to the gym and I work out. And so that's I would say my way of keeping myself focused in that state of mind where I'm internally speaking with, for me, it's a different level of consciousness. Most people will just work out for, if they want to lose weight, or they just working out because they want to change the way their body looks. But for me, I am gifting, I'm giving back to the cells that create my body. And I'm giving back to the life force that initiates the process for me to be able to live in this realm. And so that's what I do when I exercise, is this whole thing goes on in my mind while I'm working out. And so I give it thanks by exercising, by taking care of this temple first. And then I come back and I shower and I make some food and I get focused on my day at hand. I read, some quotes that I have around in my room, and I look at my vision board and I turn on my mode of helping other people. I put myself at service to other people. And so that's kind of like my job right now, is that I assist other people in becoming healthy. I work remotely for a functional medicine practitioner. And then I also am giving myself to Christmas Story family. And those are the two things that I've been, really focusing on. And so that kind of letting go of what, has been my driving force since I was probably 16 years old, 17 years old, is making money to pay bills, has shifted into just being at service to other people and taking care of me first, so that I can perform at my highest and be available to people when they need it the most. Because if my body is not performing at its highest rate, then I'm not going to be able to supply enough energy to help people. It'll drain me. Right. And so that's kind of my life right now, is that's my routine, and I'm loving it. Like literally, it's opened up so many doors of opportunity. Like me, and when I say we, me and Emmanuel, who's my business partner, we have like just so many things of opportunity are starting to pop up because of the A Christmas Story family. And we've inspired other people to actually help them build their businesses as well. So it's like, we're creating such positive waves that people want to be, they want to be a part of it. And so I think that that's amazing to me, right? Because that's in my experience of this short time that we have on this planet, that's what part of our purpose is, I believe, is to encourage, inspire the people to be the best versions of themselves. Because once we can all, or at least a lot of us, can be in that energy or that zone, then we've done or at least I've done my work for the day.
Yes. Right, exactly. And then we get up and we do it again tomorrow.
Exactly.
That is a beautiful description of the power of personal and self ongoing expansion. Yes. And our businesses, when we, a lot of us are entrepreneurs on the show, but our businesses can only expand to our level of our consciousness. Our business can't outgrow where we are. It's not possible. So the way you just described that is absolutely beautiful.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
You might want to rewind it and listen to it.
I know, right? Put it in the headphones.
Boy, am I really glad we're recording this.
Yes.
I just, had to say that because I get to listen to it over and over myself. It's true. It's very true. So A Christmas Story family is on Facebook, right?
Yes.
And because I already joined, I'm already part of the Christmas Story family because
Yay.
my friend told me about it. And I'm like, well, I want to be part of the family. And because I love the movie.
See that?
And
See, that what you just said is within the hearts and spirit of millions of people that just don't know that we're here yet. They just don't know it yet.
And even before I loved the movie, because when I was growing up, I raced sailboats. So we were always racing sailboats.
That's fascinating. Racing sailboats.
I've raced sailboats until about a year ago, and I still race here and there. But and that we were a water family, raised in Florida, in Sarasota, racing sailboats every weekend. You know, going to Key West, going around. I mean, like competitive and very good. Like I've won navigator surveys. Like I'm an athlete all over sailing, right? So there wasn't a lot of TV time. There wasn't a lot of movies. In fact, my mother was, I haven't said this story too much out loud, but my mom was a concert pianist, and her deal growing up was that you either went to live theater or live performances, and that movies were second rate.
Sure,
so you didn't do movies, you did live performance. Okay. So I finally got to go to my first movie when I snuck when I was in college. You know, all those kinds of things I look back on now and I think, well, this is kind of weird, but okay, it's just part of the story. And I never really thought much about A Christmas Story one way or the other until one of my good friends, bought her boyfriend the lamp that you have right behind you for Christmas. And I'm like, what is going on with this? So then, of course, when it came on, I watched it to see what they saw, right? I'm like, oh, I really love this movie, you know, and then since then, I've been this fan. So when I had the opportunity to invite you on the show, I seized it immediately because I believe that when you watch the acting and you watch the whole picture of the story, I do not believe that there was one accident in the players cast as all of you guys. Like there's no accident in it. Even if you didn't know it, and even if other people didn't know it, there is a reason. And there's a bigger reason why the movie bombed when it first came out. Like nobody really even cared. And now if it doesn't already have one, it's about to have a cult following if it's not already there yet. And how beautiful is that in our consciousness and expansion of the world, that people can come together around something beautiful and the story of it, the heart of it, you know? And I just think it's amazing. So I joined A Christmas Story family, and we'll make sure that the link is in the show notes so you guys can all join with me.
Awesome.
And then, because you're going to get to hear other interviews on this show from others of the cast. And so what's really fun is how tight everyone is and how amazing you guys are. Totally amazing.
Aww.
So I have another couple questions if you have a minute.
Sure.
That are kind of related, but not really. I would like to know if you've ever had challenges in your life with procrastination.
Oh, procrastination. Yes, I am 100% guilty of procrastination in my life. And I could tell you it was a very good learning experience for me as a kid, because it was part of my learning experience. So I'm going to rewind all the way back when I was a child, because this is when it actually started happening. And if nobody can ever admit that they were a procrastinator when they were a kid, they're lying to you.
True.
So my father passed when I was 5.5 years old. And my mom was left on her own to raise 2 girls and myself by herself. And that's when life like really handed me responsibility, and being accountable and doing my chores and making my bed every day and making sure that I cleaned myself. And because, you know, as a boy, you know, boys are gross when they're young. And I loved to play. I was in the mud, you know, I was in gymnastics, I was in baseball. And my mom, you know, she was a soldier for still, you know, being able to give me the opportunity to be in sports when I was a kid. And then when I was exposed to the ocean, when I was 7, 8 years old, I fell in love with surfing. That was like my world, besides martial arts. And so when it came to my yard work, because literally we lived on a half acre, and that half acre of weeds was my responsibility. And if there were weeds on that half acre of land, or acre of land, it's closer to an acre, my extracurricular activities slowly started fading away because I had to go do weeds instead. So it taught me that regardless of what I want to do in life, there are still responsibilities that need to be taken care of. And back in those days, I was just pissed off that I had to pick weeds. Nobody, I didn't really understand what the learning journey was in that until I was older, right? Until I had to start taking care of myself. And so that taught me a lot, because I was the biggest procrastinator. Like literally, if I wouldn't make my bed, wouldn't even want to take a shower because I wanted to go surf. You know what I mean? I was like, no, I'd rather do this. And so that was probably the biggest time in my life that I was a procrastinator, was when I was a child, because I didn't want to pick weeds. And no kid really does. And it's a very different life today, right? I mean, we have the way that I would say I was raised, which a majority of kids were raised back in the late 70s and the early 80s, and even before the 70s, right? Before cell phones, before iPads, before the internet, before this very fast-paced world. I mean, even being able to drive through a restaurant was like, it didn't exist. Like, you had to go to a deli or you had to go home. There's like no other two places you can actually go to eat. Not unless if you were lucky and you hit like a Baskin and Robbins and ate nothing but ice cream and brownies, right? So that was a different learning experience for me, was that my procrastination, it took away the things that I wanted to do that were most special to me in life. Mm-hmm. And that's how I learned that if I don't take care of the little things that are important, like taking out the trash, washing dishes, doing laundry, paying bills, like doing all the things that are essential for life to continue to move forward, I'm not going to be able to thrive in what I really wanted, what I would love to do more effectively. So that's my little procrastination story. Yeah. So procrastination it's a cycle that that'll take a hold of you if you're not aware, because usually procrastination means lack of motivation, right? Lack of motivation means there's something that's causing your body to tell your mind, or vice versa, I don't want, or I can't. And when that negative self-talk starts taking over, you're shutting down doors of opportunity all the way around you. Like you're creating that energy that's not conducive. So it's what rings true for me is that when we are what we believe, and when we continue to profess certain things in our minds that comes out of our mouth, that's what we're going to attract. And we're a magnet for I can't. We're a magnet for I can. So
it's true. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. So A Christmas Story family happens all the time, all year long. It's not just a Christmas.
Correct.
And brings joy of Christmas to any time of year, which I think is a really beautiful thing.
Yes.
And I think sometimes in this world where it's tricky out there, especially for sensitive people or people who want to feel connected and maybe don't have a lot of connection for whatever reason, it's a way to feel connected to people who get what it's like and understand. So if you're not already on the Facebook page for A Christmas Story family, and you're listening to this podcast and you hear my voice, go there right now and become part of the family with me, because I'm part of it already. Right? So I could talk to you forever, but I'm not going to hold you up forever. So is there anything that you wanted to say today that I missed or came to your mind and you want to say it, so that when we're all done, you feel totally Yes, complete.
The only thing that I would like to add is that it's beautiful how everything happens for a reason. When I have noticed how I always course correct, and when I say you, I bring it back to me, because in my experience, when I bring it with me, then people can either resonate it with it or not. It's their choice. And when we open ourselves up to the flow of life, then magical things start happening.
Yes.
And as part of that whole flow, Christmas Story family was one thing that transpired. But now, just to drop a seed, is that we're starting to create a TV show. And so that is something that is in the works. We have been talking to a lot of different people, because that is a huge, undertaking. And so this is just something that has inspired us to be able to do. Which avenue? We have a lot of different ideas of how we want to make it super fun for the Christmas Story family. It's not necessarily like we want to go, big network. That's not the case. The case is that we want to be able to do something that is so super fun for the Christmas Story family group that we can start there. And when it becomes a part of everybody's, I would say, thought process about what Christmas means to them, and we establish ourselves and we got something really good, and the family believes that this is something good, then maybe we'll think about, taking it to a next level. But this is really something to give back to the fans, because that's something that I want to do on a bigger level, right? Because a Christmas Story movie gives a lot to the fans. When we as the cast go to specific places and do autograph signings, we're there to be there for the fans. But the truth is that once we meet this person, we make it surreal in the moment for them. And then that's kind of like it, right? It's kind of like a one night stand type of thing. Right? Where it's like, oh my God, that was such a great experience 15 years ago. And it's like or myself, I don't have the opportunity to say, Susan, how's your son doing? When I met him, he was like 3 months old. He's got to be like 7 now, right? So, I mean, all of those things are what is, for fans of the movie, is like mind-blowing to be able to have somebody that was part of something special for them to be able to be integrated into their life and their family. And so that's kind of like the path of this thought about a TV series, is to integrate, start getting the fans involved, and being a part of something bigger than just the movie. Now, there are a lot of things. There's the Christmas Story musical, which I don't know if you've seen it. It is amazing. They put that production together, and it is, I mean, literally, it was mind blowing. The first time we saw it in Kansas when it first came out, it was just awesome. There's Brian Jones, who owns a Christmas Story house, right? I mean, he was an innovator. Why? Because it spoke to him. He loved the movie so much that he was like, I want one of those in my living room. Like, he was the first innovator to say that, right? And so he went as so far as to doing what he did for the house, rebuilding it, remodeling it, helping to give back to the community around it, so that people actually had, I would say, a better experience, right? Because when he first bought the house 20 years ago, that neighborhood was like nobody wanted to drive up there and park their car and walk away from their car, right? And so he has done so much good. And so, I mean, if anybody and everybody has not been to the house, I highly recommend you go through that experience. Why? Because it's also going to be able to bring it back home to you. You're in the house of the most famous movie that you love the most, Christmas Story. Right. And so, I mean, there's different avenues that people were innovative enough and creative enough to come to fruition. And so nobody else has done this for the fans like I have, to bring the opportunity to be closer to the cast. And so I think that since literally the cast is the movie, that we have a big potential to be able to make a big difference in a lot of people.
Oh,
So
that's beautiful. And you just described one of the things that I like to drive home with all of my interviews is that multidimensionality of people. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, well, those entertainment people, there's nothing to them, or that's just all they do. And, you know, and all of that. And it's really furthest thing from the truth. And yes, there in every group,
100%.
you could say that here and there too about one thing or the other. But my whole work is with people who are in entertainment, and everyone is multidimensional, multifaceted, with a
Yeah.
heart and a compassion that I think gets missed by the popular public because of the veil of
Sure.
stardom, you know, or whatever. And so
Yeah.
listening to you speak, and earlier today I got to speak to Zach, and his show's coming out too. And everyone who listens to these shows will start really seeing that there's more of a heart than maybe some people judge. So I'm really glad you shared that way.
Awesome.
So Yano, thank you for being on the show today.
Yes. Thank you for
And
having me.
I have one last question for you.
Yes.
It's my favorite end question. And that is, we're going to put a billboard up that the whole world's going to see. And it's got
Wow.
your quote on it. What's your quote you're going to put on your billboard the whole world's going to see?
Oh my God. Well, that is a great question. So there's the quote that there's like three quotes that I usually use, right? First one is, how'd you like a snowball sandwich?
Uh-huh.
That could be used in a lot of different ways. Then there's, nah, your Aunt Tilly. Not really much. But the one that says, all right, who's next? That can mean so many different things.
Good one. Yeah.
That I love that quote because it's, you know, through my life, how my life has changed. It means a lot of different things. And right now, when I say, all right, who's next? It's like, who's the one that's going to be next to open their lives up to change, to elevating their consciousness, to opening themselves up to the doors of opportunity, to accept who they are, and be willing to serve and open up themselves to others.
Beautiful. Oh,
so, all right, who's next?
Perfectly said. Who's next? I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show and spending all this time sharing such great value and wisdom and inspiration. I know I'm really inspired, and I can't wait to hear us talk again. So thank you so much.
Yes, excited. It's my pleasure.
If you love everything that Yano's been saying, then make sure that you join the Facebook A Christmas Story family and follow him in other areas of social media, because he's a really dynamic man with a big heart. And so remember, everybody, to put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a purpose. And so till the next episode of Someone Gets Me, be well.